Good afternoon, Greg.
How are you
Jeff
doing?
Miller in for the vacationing Scott Luton with Greg White. Welcome to Supply Chain Now. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great. It's good. Hey, it's good to be back home again.
I'll bet. Welcome to today's live stream, Greg. It must have been a blast out in Wichita. Enjoyed seeing the pictures, the LinkedIn posts. Must have been a fantastic visit to Groover Labs and to Wichita State.
Yeah, it was. I have seen the future of supply chain in Wichita, and it is good. So they're making a big commitment to both technology and supply chain at Groover Labs and at Wichita State. So it's going to be really, really interesting. They're building an entire digital transformation campus or campus building, and supply chain is a big, big part of that. So got to talk to the president for the first time, not apologizing for something, Jeff. So
that's a surprise, but
yeah, always good to talk to administration and not be apologizing.
Something of which you have a balanced scorecard, I suppose.
You could say that. Yes, that would be a fair assessment. So, well, welcome. Hey, it's good to see you, Scott. Of course, the boss is off on vacation, and
so
here we are holding down the fort, Jeff. So,
well,
thanks for
I'll do my best. I appreciate Scott giving me the chance, the reins. I hope he is enjoying his well-deserved vacation, and let's see what mischief you and I can get into today. Looking forward to it, Greg.
Yeah, likewise.
Let's say hello to some of our guests here and participants. David, hello from the road. So David's on the road traveling. Good to have you here.
Yeah, I wonder where he is. Let's hear about it.
Maybe he'll tell us. All right. Peter, good afternoon. Good to see you. Hello, Sushil. Let's see.
We got a few new folks here.
Yeah,
Jeff.
we do. I'm looking at
them. Must be here just to see you.
Mohib. So same comments to you, Mohib. It was great to see you. You looked like you were having a ball with Greg and the folks at Wichita State. Yes. We know you're a shocker. We got it.
Hey, he did a great job putting this together. So we met with NIAR, which is an aviation research institute there on campus. We did a great campus tour with Rob Gerlach, who's the VP of Innovation, Tech, and what do I want to say? Anyway, getting tech into the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Deb Franklin gave us a great tour of NIAR, and Kurt from Groover joined us. It's a really amazing facility. In fact, with your knowledge of AR and VR and all of that sort of thing, I think you would have really, really enjoyed it. We got to play in a VR environment inside an aircraft, virtually inside. It's pretty cool.
Well, you know what struck me when I saw this, and we'll get back into welcoming our guests here in just a second, and participants, is there's such a strong core capability in aviation, which in many areas has for decades led the way,
right?
In model-based engineering, model-based design, and it's just, I think this is a consequence of being in that location, right? The world air capital. It is for a reason. So
yeah,
absolutely,
no doubt.
Hi, Memory. Nice to see you today. Glad you're here. And I'd like to welcome special first-time participant from this side of the screen, a gentleman named Scott Luton. So,
Ponte Vedra, I'm going to have to look that up and see. I'm wondering, Jeff, if he's talking about our mischief or his, because he's at the beach, and I saw that he already has his canopy up, and
I saw that. So, like, perfect.
He may be getting his buzz on in a couple of ways. So,
exactly.
And I hope that he is. He's definitely earned it.
Absolutely. So glad you dialed in, Greg. Thank you. Let's see. Sheldon Rose, good morning. I hope you're doing well today.
Yeah, good to have you back.
Nick, we haven't done anything yet, so thanks for loving this today. We're glad that you are. So hopefully we'll retain that over the next hour or so. So
yeah.
Well, I want to do a couple of things here right up front. Let's go over here. First of all,
there we go.
There we go. So a couple of calendar and scheduling items. I am really looking forward to this. I'm a huge follower of Kevin and the work he's doing now with digital transformers. And I think this webinar with Dr. Swink and Nick from Esker, this is going to be a fantastic webinar. I'm looking forward to it because I think we're only now beginning to scratch the surface on what digital transformation can do for the supply chain. In a lot of quarters, digital transformation is becoming a little bit thread worn. There's a little bit of digital transformation fatigue, but I don't see it here. And I think there's so much that we can do at comparatively low risks and low costs and rapid returns. And every week, Kevin's got something going on. And this webinar, I think, is going to be a fantastic addition to make us all think of opportunities that we can capitalize on.
I think you're right. I mean, there's a difference between saying digital transformation and doing it. And folks like Kevin, they really actually get it done. And I think we have to acknowledge that digital transformation is not moving from spreadsheets to tech or electronic spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. It's really defining your business in a new way and enabling it with technology, and then guiding processes with technology. So it's a holistic transformation, really. But digital is at the core of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm fond of saying, and I guess sometimes we date ourselves when we say things like this, but I'm of a career generation where we couldn't do some of the things that now today are table stakes. We knew what we wanted to do and try to accomplish, but the technologies were either prohibitive or didn't exist. And to see now this rapid acceleration of technologies and their valuable application, that's to me the key. It's getting stuff done. And so this will be a good webinar. Looking forward to it.
So let me share real quickly. You must be a Gen Xer, because I think our entire generation has kind of felt that way. We always felt like there was a new and better way to do it. Technology wasn't quite there. I think a lot of people in our generation pushed it that direction. Mm-hmm. And we're starting to see the fruits of our labors, and it's good. It's really good for business. And, again, Kevin driving so much change.
So true.
From so many angles. He works with so many companies. It's incredible.
The second thing, to make sure you have this on your calendar, is Laura Ceceri's annual conclave of, this is an invitation-only thing, of supply chain innovators. And Supply Chain Now is the exclusive virtual host. So put this in your diaries. It's out of Hawaii. It's in September, but you know Laura Ceceri well. You know her leadership over the last 20 years through Supply Chain Insights for Business. She is a must-listen to, must-see kind of individual in terms of her perspectives on the industry. And this conclave, for lack of a better term, is her annual meeting. And more details to come, but make sure you put this down in your diary, and you'll hear more about it in the coming weeks. This is an exciting thing for us here at Supply Chain Now, and we think it'll be very valuable to us and to all you who are participating. Greg? Yeah,
she always gets together the best practitioners in the industry. It's a pitch-free environment. You won't have to endure a pitch from a service provider or technology provider like me. But you will get a ton of incredibly valuable information, be able to communicate with and actually network with peers, get some great ideas, and see the reality of, as we talked about, like with digital transformation, see the reality of what's being said versus what's being done, and how Laura and her team are pressing organizations to do more than to say more. And that's what's so valuable. And you can save yourself $3,000 or $4,000 by watching it via the live stream. If you can't get there, or can't get that kind of budget for airfare and hotel and all of that, it's a great opportunity to get engaged here and learn a ton from practicing professionals.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's a couple more welcomes. I wanted to catch this one from Mohib. 3,300 plus views on the post, and there's a link there for more information. So again, fantastic event there, both at the Groover Labs and at the campus. And I imagine, Mohib, your feet haven't touched the ground yet. So
you would be hard pressed to find a more dedicated shocker than Mohib, for sure. And I really enjoyed spending the afternoon with him.
I'm sure. All All right, well, let's jump into the buzz. What's happening in the last 7 days? And I think there's some interesting things that are going on here. This one caught my eye, Greg. CBRE, of course, is a well-known real estate investor, operator, commercial properties. And they just issued a report that we're going to need 300 million square feet of warehouse capacity in the next 3 years or so, 4 years, arguably, to meet growing demand of e-commerce. And this struck me as interesting because it's a significant rise, 26%. Worldwide, it's a notable component. It's 1.5 billion square feet, so-called warehouse space worldwide. What caught me, though, in particular, was that they're talking about omni-channel. So it's not just traditional distribution centers. And that provokes a whole different line of thinking in my mind. If they're saying we need this much more fulfillment warehouse space for purposes of fulfillment, I wonder, what does this mean to continuing efficiency improvements in distribution and logistics? That's just an enormous addition to what we already have. And it's largely going to have to be constructed, especially for these omni-channel facilities requirements.
Yeah. I think, the immediate thought was 330 million. That was exactly what went through my head. And I thought there has to be some alternative. And fortunately there is, because in an omni-channel or e-fulfillment facility, about 75% of the square footage is wasted. And there are now all these automated retrieval and storage and retrieval systems out there that can make it much, much more efficient. So I'm hopeful that instead of buying more real estate, companies buy more productive and more accurate picking systems, like these automated storage and retrieval systems, and reduce the amount of space. This is probably a little bit of hopefulness, Jeff, on the part of CBRE and other commercial real estate agents, because they make more by selling more square feet. But there is no doubt that we need more fulfillment facilities. I mean, Amazon has, since 2014, been building out a global network of fulfillment facilities, and they're not slowing down. In fact, they are accelerating to do so. But I think things like, there are companies called, I think one's called Cardex, and there's AutoStore, and there are other solutions out there that can literally make 100% of the space usable for picking and sorting. So hopefully we use some automation that reduces the amount of footprint that these plants or these fulfillment facilities require, and increases the throughput and accuracy at the same time.
I think that's the key, and that was what I found missing in the article. And I think you're right. These CBRE certainly has a perspective based on what it does for a living, so to speak. But there are a lot of companies now that are applying route management, as we know, inside the four walls. Really sophisticated versions of that create much more dense cubing and much more dense ability to retrieve and package. And it just seemed like this ignores that, because those gains, I don't have the name of the company in front of me. It's Swiss something that is involved in these retrieval systems, small robots, and now some level of automated pack as well as automated pick. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about improvements in the 10% year over year as a starting point for efficient operations. And I wonder if that's factored here. This also kind of influences where you place DCs and whether they're truly omni-channel and who's actually being fulfilled. I think that's going to drive a lot of the need for the technology you're talking about. Traditional pick and pack operates one way. This seems the need is much different now. So
yeah, and I think another thing that I think, I'm an old retailer, Jeff, so I feel free to say this. We retailers need to recognize that we're great at merchandising, product development, product selection, marketing. We're not great at logistics and supply chain. And one of the things that we can do to be both more effective, more cost effective, and reduce the amount of wasted space in these kind of facilities is to go through specialist type organizations, 3PLs or, e-fulfillment. They have e-forward distributors, all sorts of, whatever shape it takes in a particular marketplace. But I think that will create a lot of efficiency that will eliminate a lot of unnecessary real estate space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you can see it happening as new retailers, new direct to consumer retailers and new mass retailers come online. They are going directly to those kinds of solutions because they recognize what they're really, really good at.
Sure. Sure.
And, like anything, the pendulum will swing back to self-fulfillment at some point. It, unavoidably does. But I think if we recognize what our real gifts are, we can consolidate our goods with the neighbor's goods and have somebody else help us get those to the consumer.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'd look for, please weigh in here. What are you seeing in the market? Yeah, Peter, thank you. At Air Canada, we had a robot retrieval system installed in 1995 and mini and maxi loads. So he says it saved us thousands of square feet of warehouse space, exactly to your point.
Mm-hmm.
That when these, and this is, of course, many generations older technology back in the 90s, but it made a difference then. Especially in critical parts fulfillment, like field availability services kind of a thing in aviation. Of course, that's critical. AOGs, aircrafts on ground, and so forth, being something to be avoided. So these, I'm sure, paid for themselves very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's there have been so many of these efficiencies. I think finally technology has caught up to allow us to democratize it somewhat, right? I mean, you had to be a big airline or a big organization to be able to afford it, but now it's sort of an every person's type solution.
So let's move to the next story, because on the one hand, we see a perspective taken by CBRE and maybe some others that we're going to need to see growth, and then we see that, and this is not a new topic for you, Greg. Tell me what you really think about this. There's an article in the Logistics Report from Jennifer Smith talking about, again, the regionals, these small companies and what they're doing. And it was it's not exactly top line news, but it caught my eye because these companies, the laser ships, for example, they're growing on the basis of expansion. So if you take the pizza metaphor, they're not stealing somebody else's slice of pizza. They're just partaking of the expanded pizza, if you will. And the growth here is such that these companies are saying they're able to see profitability when they enter a new region within a small number of months. And I just think that if you think about the infrastructure that gets set up, if you're going to be a regional package carrier and distributor or do a last mile where you're picking up from somebody else, in either case, there's infrastructure, hiring, assets, and so forth. And to be able to become profitable this quickly is notable. I think this continues to be a consequence of the bigs being sold out, largely capacity. None of the big three are saying they're going to take on new major shippers between now and the end of the year. And in fact, in the article, LaserShip said it also, in some of its markets, is not taking on any new shippers between now and the end of the year. Its capacity is committed. But again, it just struck me that there's room for growth in this industry. And I think, Greg, in the past, you've said, look, this is there will be more coming.
Yeah,
more participants coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the bigs, as you call them, I love that, Jeff, by the way, the bigs have decided to stand their ground and in fact take advantage of their advantage position and up rates. And basically, even the new CEO at UPS issued her "let them eat cake" statement. To those who feel put out by the increase in fees. And of course, when you take that stance and you decide to service a limited amount of companies and you do so at a premium price, there's always opportunity. And as you said, and I can't remember who you said it first, death comes from below, right? So
Andy Grove, and CEO of Intel.
Andy Grove, that's right. So and I'm not sure that this is necessarily a threat, because these are markets and customers that the bigs have chosen not to do business with, but it's a great opportunity. It creates a great foothold. And if the bigs decide to get into this business, it creates a great acquisition path for these companies, right? And I'm encouraged. Honestly, I missed the part where they are profitable in a relatively short time, because with all of the fees that are added on by UPS and FedEx and the like, I was beginning to wonder whether it's unfeasible to do ship to consumer at the level that we're doing it, or if the bigs were really just taking advantage of their market position. It sounds like it's the latter, which is encouraging, because if we can get stuff shipped for less to the consumer, then that means e-commerce and direct to consumer commerce remains feasible. And that's an important part of our economy, obviously, and growing at a rapid rate as we go into the future. So it's encouraging to see that you can make money without charging these exorbitant fees.
The question, one of among many questions that it raises in my mind, is what do the distribution networks look like when you have a company like Lone Star Overnight, which had been operating only in Texas and Oklahoma, and now it's Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas. And if they penetrate those markets to the same level that they penetrated the Texas market, does that have a fundamental effect on where companies place distribution centers, where retailers decide to position their goods?
Yeah.
These are not independent of one another. And I'm a student of networks and wondering how these parts all come together, because in the big economic picture, you'd want to know what the fulfillment capabilities up all the way to last mile look like in certain areas, not just in the big municipalities, but population centers, in the second and third tier away from big municipalities. And what influence will that have on this additional 330 million square feet? It's an interesting question. I don't think the CBRE answer is necessarily locked in stone or written in stone.
Yeah, and interestingly, I had a personal observation of, I haven't lived outside of a major city, metropolitan area for a long time, and having been back in Wichita, we were ordering a gift for someone who had done a good deed for us in Wichita. We ordered it on Friday, I believe, and it just arrived on Sunday or Monday. So today. So I guess we in big areas, we've been insulated from the fact that 2-day delivery isn't necessarily a reality for everyone, for everything. I mean, in Atlanta, New York, LA, wherever, you can get 2-day delivery on just about everything, but not everyone can. And someone taking this sort of regional specialty to provide that service could be yet another method of disruption if we set that same expectation in some of these rural areas or smaller urban areas around the country.
Mm-hmm. Larry Long says it's good for the economy where we can match buyers with sellers and perhaps decrease the strain on the bigs.
I love it. That's good, Larry. Release the strain. I like that. Yeah, and I am wholeheartedly in your camp. Let's decrease more strain on the bigs and give them some opportunity to sit back and reflect a little.
I don't know that they will, but okay, we'll give that a go. Tell us what you see, to folks that are on the stream. What are you seeing in markets that you operate in, that your companies that you either buy from, sell to? What are you seeing, and what do you think is going to happen as we see all these different technologies for last mile, different players showing up? Here in the Atlanta area, we see LaserShip, we see a handful of others, and sometimes we see companies that we haven't seen before. So we know there's growing market here. Yeah. It's not just seeing prime vans running all over the Atlanta city and suburb areas. So it's definitely dynamic, and I think, like you say, Greg, it's because there's the growth in demand is outstripping the supply in terms of infrastructure and capabilities among UPS, FedEx, DHL.
Yeah, we just saw a new unicorn anointed, Bring, with a couple or 3 Gs. Just took investment, and I don't remember exactly the valuation, but more than $1 billion. So
there you go.
And you look at a number of these companies participating in, as you talked about, micro fulfillment or regional fulfillment, or taking the bigs head on in last mile. There are already some significant successes there. So.
Well, anything that it will serve to improve that and improve omni-channel. It used to be, as I think we all have experienced, you order something and it's designed to either be in store or be to arrive at the store, or you can pay a little more and have it brought to you. And very often the fulfillment, because it was coming out of an in-store fulfillment capability somewhere else, didn't work really well. That seems to have improved over the last year. Omnichannel is definitely working much more efficiently and effectively. And if that's where these investments are going to go, that's great. Be interesting to see what happens over the coming year.
I can't believe we've been on here this long and you and I have only agreed. Something's wrong with the universe, Jeff. Let's
Well, we got a few more stories to go in the
good. So we've got more opportunities.
Yeah, I didn't exactly watch Muay Thai or any kind of martial art, but I was prepared for this meeting today with you anyway. So let's go on. So continuing kind of in the same theme of what's going on with respect to the movement of goods, this one's a different angle. This is reshoring. Again, another topic we've talked about a lot on the Buzz.
Mm-hmm.
We have other sessions that you talk about it with other guests around. And this one is I'm paying a lot of attention to as well, because I think there was this knee jerk, might overstate it, but there was a strong reaction during COVID because of the dire disruptions that occurred. Again, topic well explored by us on this air. And we're seeing now that a reputable entity, Thomas Register, Thomas, has done its 2021 manufacturing survey and says it's that 83% of North American manufacturers are going to accomplish some level of reshoring, or have committed to, I should say. And for me, the notable fact is it's the same question they asked last year when 54% responded in the affirmative. So clearly there's something going on. There's not a lot of detail yet as to what that looks like when you perhaps have a strongly vertical supply chain. How much of that are you going to reshore, or are you, for an example, an assembler of components coming out of the sub-assembly industry, something that China effectively invented, where you build modular things from standardized components. But it struck me again that part of the response to fulfillment difficulties, to cycle times, and perhaps the cost as well, is to reshore. And the article, as it talked about the study, said that procurement officials or leaders in procurement are observing, well, let's not get too excited here, because that's not without risk. If you have a supply base, an inbound supply chain that can't equally be reshored or cannot have an equal amount of risk removed, it doesn't really help you that much. Your fulfillment won't improve. So again, this is kind of an interesting article because nothing operates in isolation from one another. And just saying that 83% of companies and manufacturers in North America saying that they're going to reshore does not automatically mean we're going to see better fulfillment. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think, first of all, I think the hurdles to reshoring are dramatic, right? And in fact, I've worked with a company who's bringing out a new product, and it's a premium jogging stroller that could cost, I don't know, upwards of $1,500. And if they were to produce it in the U.S., it would have to be a $2,200 stroller. And in doing a survey of their customers, of course, their potential customers, of course, almost no one, I think 2% said that they would be able to afford, or interested in affording that cost. Mm-hmm. So it's a dramatic difference in cost. We have labor issues, not only the cost of labor, but the availability of labor. In fact, we do many articles, as you know, Jeff, where we talk about people are staying away from manufacturing jobs in droves because of the 3Ds, dark, dirty, and dangerous, that people perceive manufacturing to be. And of course, even automation is not necessarily the answer, because most robotics are built and produced in China. Right? So it's a difficult lift. Even building in, even in the NAFTA region, Canada is right out. Of course, they don't have the human capital to do it, and the cost would be excessive there as well. But even Mexico, I think, is so much higher in cost than China, where a typical worker makes $10,000 to $13,000 a year. It's hard to compete with that. And then, as you said, so many of the raw materials or componentry parts are built in China. Even this stroller, Jogalong, even their stroller, so many of the parts are made in China. They have to be shipped to Taiwan or Vietnam, where they're intending to produce, to even build it there. So it's a heavy lift, and I wonder how much of this is hand waving because it's a interesting or a hot topic, right? To appease either labor or the government or whomever they wish to please with these statements, but it's going to be very, very tough to do it. I think for select products it can be done, right? And I think for some products it will be government subsidized to do with pharmaceuticals and national defense type products and those sorts of things. Essentials, as we talked about, though I think the list of essentials probably should be broadened, but yeah, it's going to be very tough. I mean, just opinion wise, what's your thought? I mean, you have to be very close to this topic, I imagine.
I think and I want to grab some comments here in a minute because people are now weighing in on this. My perspective is that in North American manufacturing, the reshoring drive is driven more by the outages, the bullwhip effect that we saw consequential to COVID-19.
Yeah.
And it's failing to recognize that a reshored supply chain is not automatically the most efficient supply chain from an economic standpoint, as you just said, nor is it the most responsive supply chain. That's the paradigm that I think I worry has taken hold among leadership, many of them in our industry, that reshoring, onshoring equals stabilization, stability, and improvement, because they see 10 days of ships sitting outside Long Beach, or 15-day, or people bypassing Hamburg because it's just too risky. I think Maersk said that there's a moratorium on Hamburg. So I think it's trying to solve the wrong problem rather than, again, it's easy to say this, looking at optimal sourcing or making the economics of product design management such that you could dynamically move things within reason. You can't move raw materials around, but certain kinds of manufacturing lend themselves to a level of modularization that make movement of manufacturing from one contract manufacturer to another easier, a lesson that's been known in electronics and high tech for decades. And I wonder if in more assembly-oriented goods, more fabrication-oriented manufacturing, those principles that have served the electronics industry so well could be applied more broadly. And that would, to me, be the offset to this eagerness of reshoring, which may not yield the results that people are looking for. So,
yeah, it's also, if the product is produced in any level of volume, it's impossible. It takes a multitude of countries to even approach the workforce that China has.
Exactly.
Right. I'd like to see companies moving more towards a diversification of vendors as opposed to diversity, which of course I'm for as well, but diversification of vendors where they have secondary sources or alternate sources for these products, so they're not so sorry, that's my I got to take this. It's my car warranty update. So they have secondary sources for these, for these type of products, so that when something happens, they've got an alternative to go to. And in many industries, they make a very specific practice of keeping a secondary source on the hook, give them 20% of the business at all times, right?
Yep.
So
exactly.
So that they have the ability to ramp up, and they have the motivation to ramp up when you need them to.
Yep.
I think that's a more reasonable approach rather than swinging the pendulum all the way the other direction to reshoring.
Exactly. That won't end well, and we'll come back just as you said. Peter says, totally agree. Set aside cost to produce. Reshoring will continue to rely on raw materials that are not readily available, located within the North American marketplace.
Yeah.
Sheldon, last mile is definitely impacted by local network effects and localized demand for service delivery. When you live in these remote areas, the bigs service levels don't apply to you. You want to know how soon can I get my stuff? This leaves the way for local competition, and these guys normally have local knowledge and connections that may be better service. That's a great point, Sheldon.
Well said.
Yeah, well said. That's so true, and that may be the secret sauce to some of these regionals that have, in terms of making the ROI more rapidly, achieving it more rapidly. You get a good reputation, and so then you build a network that says, I'm going to deal with local retailers, regional retailers. I've got customer satisfaction scores and successful fill rates that are the envy, because as we all know, if your package arrives late, you don't blame the carrier. You kind of blame the retailer who sold it to you and chose that delivery channel.
Right.
So
That's absolutely right. And I think, that to me is one of the beauties of small business, because a small business, a regional carrier, they don't have to, or any regional business, they don't have to make the same margins if they're not trying to feed thousands and thousands of shareholders, if they're only trying to feed a smaller portion of share stockholders or their employee base or whatever. So
got them out of order here. Memory.
No, that's okay.
It just shifted when I clicked. Memory, how sustainable is reshoring when we look at the fact that resources aren't centralized to specific locations? Exactly. You can reshore regardless of what nation you are, and suddenly all the inbound materials just got, far less efficient from a supply chain standpoint. That's a great point.
Yep.
I wonder if that's being considered, Memory. When companies decide to reshore, are they looking, because the net total landed cost might go down in some areas, but from a sustainability standpoint, it might actually be a net negative. That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, that's a double entendre too. I mean, how sustainable from an economic standpoint is it, and how sustainable from an ecosystem standpoint is it? I think both of those are great questions.
Yep. Peter apparently agrees as well. So thank you, Peter.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. Aditya. Sheldon, even large retailers are collaborating with local vendors for the last mile delivery. Large retailers provide the technology, maybe to book online and pass the message to locals for delivery. Yeah, we do see these models where, and I think there's an opportunity for significant automation and connectivity. I don't know if this is in the LaserShip or the Lone Star model, but they certainly should be directly connected to the order management systems of the retailers with whom they contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a seamless thing. All right, let's press on. So let's move to our next article. This one.
I'm glad you pulled this one up.
Say again?
I said, I'm really glad you pulled this one up. We don't talk about this stuff.
We don't talk. Yeah, and this is something that, as a weekly participant of you and Scott, we don't often find opportunities to talk about mergers and acquisitions in the enterprise software solution space. And arguably Rockwell Automation is not quite a pure play industrial software OEM, but they certainly have a piece of their business that is. This one caught my eye, and it's kind of tied in with the other stories today, because Rockwell Automation, a world-leading provider of industrial automation, hardware and software solutions, just bought Plex Systems. And Plex, I think, arguably is not quite as well known as Rockwell Automation, but they've been in the ERP, MES, factory visibility, and supply chain visibility game for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And they're one of the few companies that has got an up and running, and has had for some time, cloud platform in these areas. And this one caught my eye because this, to me, signals Rockwell Automation's belief that there's a lot more connecting to be done between signals coming out of a factory. And by the way, Rockwell Automation's taking these factory signaling capabilities, not just SCADA and PLC, but the visibility that comes to how a machine is performing in a factory, and extending this out into the supply chain for fielded assets, but also for where's my stuff kinds of questions and warehouse operations. Now, they're sticking to the knitting. They're a information-oriented and hardware to get information-oriented kind of company. But to me, the acquisition of Plex signals, we think there's a lot more we could be doing with supply chain signaling around using it effectively. I think this is an area that Laura Ciceri focuses on as well in her insights and analysis, that for all the strength of the planning technologies we have, the procurement technologies we have, the design engineering and configuration control and design release, digital product management, there's still room to grow, polite way of saying some gaps between the signals coming from the fields and the use of them by these enterprise tools. And that's why I thought this would be an interesting one for you and me to chat about and get our participants today to also weigh in on. This to me is a bit of a harbinger of potentially things to come.
Well, I mean, Plex has been manufacturing focused from the beginning, whereas many of the other ERPs, the SAPs and Oracles and whomever, have been moving towards retail and distribution in other markets. So their pure play in manufacturing is really, really interesting focus. And I think, Rockwell has so much power and impact on the manufacturing space that it's going to be an interesting combination for starters.
Well, it is because it's mutually beneficial to both companies, and the folks that have Rockwell Automation innovation solutions that don't necessarily tie effectively, or they pay high costs of integration to systems, there may be opportunities where those integrations will become easier. Similarly, companies that own Plex or that category of software at that size, not in an enterprise Oracle or SAP, may find abilities to connect to not just the factory floor through Rockwell Automation's factory solutions, but other information out in the field. And again, as a supply chain practitioner, this is of interest to me because visibility is king. Everybody talks about it.
Right.
And yet we know how to get the data, and high levels of investment are being made in track and trace and visibility. Yet we seem not to always embed those data into decision processes, automated or manual, inside the systems that are actually operating the supply chains, the planning, procurement, order release in the factory, warehouse, spare parts, DRP. We don't seem to incorporate. So that to me is the interesting thing about this acquisition. I don't know that it's the first of its kind. Probably is not, but it's certainly one of the more recent ones that's where you had two companies that were so distinctively identified with particular segments of the industrial marketplace.
Yeah, well, Coke bought Infor a year or two ago, whenever that was, and they had owned a good chunk of it for a while. And Panasonic bought Blue Yonder recently, but those are distinctly different solutions. Blue Yonder largely focused in the retail space, pretty strong since they bought Red Prairie, right? Pretty strong WMS, pretty strong retail planning and forecasting and alignment tools there, but not as strong in manufacturing. And Plex didn't really start as a finance solution, unlike most ERPs, right? It started as a manufacturing shop floor type solution. So they come at it with a greater level of depth of functionality than a lot of solutions. One of my concerns when this happens is, does this become effectively Rockwell's private solution, or does it become part of their service offering? And it's yet another company like in the old days when stuff used to just get buried at IBM, right? A company would get purchased by IBM and you'd never hear from them again unless you were already an IBM customer and they were, now selling it into their customer base. So I think all of those things are a possibility, but I think this, the thing that I like about this is supply chain solutions being valued at this level, right? $2.2 billion. Of course, they're a huge, Plex is a huge company, but a valuation like that would have been unheard of just months ago, right? A year or so ago, for sure.
No,
I think this signals what the market thinks about supply chain tech, and that they are thinking about supply chain tech, and they have finally got the message, as you're talking about, that there needs to be more transparency and visibility and integration between the various aspects of the business to make the supply chain work.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I don't remember what the multiple was or is, but it's significant. So there is some of that as well. That the combination here is definitely expected to be it'll be accretive, obviously, to Rockwell Automation. The acquisition will, but Plex will continue to exist as an entity on its own, obviously, for some period of time, unless, like you said, to your point about companies that buy and internalize, if they do that, of course, it changes. But they're a profitable company, and I think this is a good growth signal for them as well.
Yeah.
Sorry for the alphabet soup here. MES, Manufacturing Execution Systems, basically the software solutions that control the operation of the factory floor when an order is dispatched. So that's and they pick up data from programmable logic controllers, and SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. These are the OT piece of IT, OT, operations technology. So Mohib, thank you for that question. I should have made that clear.
It is. Supply chain is nothing if it's not alphabet soup, right?
It's an acronym-rich environment.
Yes, that's right.
I see others answered it as well. Ramesh, thank you for answering. So anyway, it just seems to me that these stories today, as we were looking at the headlines, and some of them seem to deal with more with logistics, others more with commercial opportunity, and it just seemed that these kind of hung together. You've got the bigs saying the capacity, we're at capacity, we're not going to pick up anybody new, and the regionals are able to grow. At the same time, you've got the real estate investment and operations companies saying we need more space, which begs the question, do we really? And what are the impacts of technology there? And then you've got companies that are doing technology acquisitions that could also have an effect on this. So this for me was kind of the logistics and infrastructure week. So,
well, I think it's, really the breadth of these stories really signals the complexity of supply chain, right? You have physical, you have movement, you have technology issues, and of course you have the logistical issues of how do we put all these things together and how do we optimize for this risk balancing exercise. Jeff, I think, we grew up in an era when supply chain was considered a necessary evil, a cost saving exercise. And now companies are finally starting to realize that their supply chain, the most important thing that I've been saying, I have been saying this for the last few weeks, and the most important thing that supply chain delivers is your brand identity, because you have one job, right? Get the products to the customers that want them when they want them, right? So you have to deal with all of this incredible complexity, and instead of looking at it as a cost-saving exercise, you have to recognize it as a risk balancing exercise, because there are so many risks, right? The way that I was taught supply chain by a founder of a company I worked for was assume everyone will fail you and make an alternate plan for that, right? Cost is just one more risk, right? Brand identity is a risk. Logistics and transportation and lead time and order frequency and availability of goods, all of those things are risks to be managed. The availability of space to continue to distribute, right? The availability of delivery services to be able to get it to the customer in the end. And it's a combinatorial analytics alphabet soup. Wow. Something like that, right? Because it is such a complex problem that you solve, and you have to be looking out for where someone or something or some aspect of the chain could fail.
Yeah.
At all times.
Clearly, there's something in the water supply out at Wichita State University, because you've obviously come back a heck of a lot smarter than you sounded a couple of weeks ago. No, but
thanks. I just talked to somebody who said that their favorite thing about supply chain and why they were happy to be an investor was combinatorial analytics. So how about that?
Get paid by the syllable.
Yeah. Right.
But I'm like you. I was taught early on that supply chain is about risk mitigation. And if you go back to some of the earliest academic work that came out from operations research, and I am a fanatic about going back to core principles. There are some core timeless principles that inform our art, our supply chain management, and risk is risk mitigation is the kind of the foundation of everything. Supply chains exist to deliver goods, to move goods, to power industry, and the improvements are always geared toward reducing some risk, hopefully effectively monetizable risk. And this goes back to Lovejoy's law, right? Inventory, capacity, capability, and information. And generally speaking, information has the lowest total cost of ownership of the others. It's expensive to have spinning excess capacity. It's expensive to have inventory that you have to count, move, heat, cool, secure, lose, find, and so on. So we hold these kinds of things kind of as core principles, and we build technology and business solutions around them. That's what makes this so cool, and why after so many years in the business, I think most of us are still jazzed that we can continue to learn. So
yeah.
Want to grab
Yeah.
some of here, Mohib? Mohib posted up here. Okay, Mohib. All right, so
we use the whole alphabet.
Yeah, we use the whole alphabet. Warehouse management, MES, supplier relationship management, big MRP and little MRP, right? Independent requirements, independent. So yeah, it's exactly right, Mohib. Alphabet soup. And memory weighs in as well. Monetization of risk, absolutely true. Looking at cost savings alone will never be sustainable, particularly in this competitive environment. Absolutely true. Good observation, memory. Absolutely true.
Yeah, I think that companies have to acknowledge. They have to acknowledge. You know, it was only a couple of years ago that we were talking about the supply chain as a necessary evil. Then it moved to competitive advantage. Now I think people recognize that it's even more than that. It is your brand identity. It is the deliverer of your brand identity. And the more companies that take it from that goal back, the more successful they will be.
Certainly. Peter weighs in. Opportunities are limitless for the bold right now. Think to be different. Not much needs to be reinvented. We simply need to leverage what is right in front of us right now. See the forest through the trees. See the big picture, not simply the problem. If only focused on the problem, the true answer is not seen. The voice of experience, Mr. Bolay.
Wow.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Spot on.
That's a quotable quote.
That's a quotable quote. Thank you, Peter. And you speak for me with that statement. That's how I feel. Excellent observation. Well, those were the ones we picked, Greg. Interesting times. I've enjoyed the chance to be here with you. I thank Scott and the team for the opportunity to sit in the big chair and bounce ideas.
You've done good.
I enjoyed it, and I appreciate the opportunity. On behalf of the whole team here at Supply Chain Now, we appreciate you participating in the buzz. Greg, this was great. Chance to be with you. We've spent time bouncing ideas around in various venues over various adult beverages, and this was a lot of fun. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. I think bringing your perspective is really valuable, and you're out there doing it these days, right?
Trying to, yeah.
So, I mean, you're working with companies that are actively trying to improve their supply chains and their digital platforms and all of that sort of thing. So I'm just curious, as you've been out there in industry, is there anything aside from these stories that jumps out at you that's particularly encouraging or notable?
No science experiments, speed to first value, and the respect for the value of the digital thread. Again, another buzzword, perhaps, buzzword bingo, but there's substance to it. Another concept that some may roll their eyes as consultancies, but it's got teeth, is the idea of orchestration. And we talk a lot about digital transformation and that there may be some transformation fatigue. At the end of the day, we're all trying to improve our operations, and it requires us to orchestrate data, resources, functions, and do it in new ways. And so there's an emerging thinking, and you can see this in some of the leaders in the industry, the thought leaders that are saying, the technologies are there. They're now stable. They've been around for 6, 7, 8, sometimes 10 years. Our ability to use them requires us to orchestrate them more effectively. And it truly is that the metaphor of a conductor of an orchestra, and the orchestra being comprised of sections of instruments, whether they be manufacturers or logisticians or design operations, the metaphor actually holds really well. So I'm encouraged to see that recognizing the transformation has to be measured in real things getting done. So there's a pragmatism there, and the fact that we recognize you can't do it alone. You're always going to have trading partners, multiple providers of technology. Anybody who is monolithic and proprietary is walking dead. Strong opinion. Those things to me are very encouraging, and that's why I believe, Greg, I hope our participants and our colleagues here think the same way. This is why this industry keeps reinventing itself almost every day. So that's what I see happening, and that's what my clients are asking me for, is help me figure out how to use these to solve a business problem and do it pragmatically. I don't have a year. Do it now.
Right. And that's good to see, because one of the things that, we talk every month to Laura Cecere, and one of the things that we see is so many companies treating this as a science experiment. So it's good to see that there are companies acting right now on this change, because it's absolutely critical. We have a new access to even more robust data than we've ever had in the past. And it's allowed us to review and revise some of our points of view on the standard paradigms and best practices of the past, because some of those best practices were established based on the presumption of lack of data, for instance. So we can now, with a more robust and more available data, we can revise those points of view. And I think that's really, really valuable. So that's good. I'm glad that you're seeing that out there.
Absolutely are. Absolutely are. Well, Greg, thanks again. On behalf of the Supply Chain Now team, I'm Jeff Miller. Greg, delightful to be with you. And I have the honor of saying the closing words that that Scott says every week: do good, give forward, and be the change that is needed. Y'all have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you on the next Supply Chain Now livecast. Bye.
Thanks, Jeff.